Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, we're going to start looking at the theme decks from Legions, which is the second part of Onslaught block. So let's dive in, and we'll start looking at Elvish Rage, which is a mono-green deck, which I'm pretty sure you can guess the theme of it. So let's look at the deck list. So this deck list, we have 35 creatures and 25 land. That's it. It is just creatures and land, which is I think definitely the first time that's happened in this video series that we just have just creatures in a theme deck. So a quick bit of background, I guess, and like why this is kind of weird. So Legions was a gimmick set in that all the new cards in it were just creatures. There weren't any instant sorceries and charms, nothing. It was just creatures. Which is like it's a weird choice, honestly, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, 35 creatures, 25 land, mana curve off to the side there. Let's start looking at all these creatures. So, as you can probably guess from the deck being called Elvish Rage, the theme is elves. So, like, elves are obviously like a really well-supported tribe these days. I think Onslaught was really like the start of that happening. Like a lot of kind of the really classic, iconic elf tribal cards were, introduced in this set. Not saying there weren't ones before Onslaught block, but this is, I think, where they started to really pick up momentum. Same with actually a lot of tribes, like goblins and zombies and stuff. Onslaught being a block with tribal as a mechanic, really, as its gimmick, really. It's not mechanic, it's a gimmick. But yeah, they stuck really close to that, and we just ended up with like a lot of cards, which still are like pretty common and popular today. Anyway, so we have some mana ramp elves here because that's one thing elves do really well is ramp up. So we have Birchlaw Rangers, 1/1 for 1, tap 2 untapped elves you control to get 1 mana of any color, and it can morph. So morph being this mechanic introduced in Onslaught block where you can play it face down as a 2/2 creature with no color or types for 3 colorless, and then you can pay its morph cost to flip it up at any time. Just to serve as kind of like a surprise or something. This having morph actually has, I think, a bit of utility because it just means like if you don't want just the 1/1, you can have a 2/2 if you need like maybe a little bit of extra muscle, I suppose. A single Elvish Pioneer, 1/1 for a 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, you put a land from your basic land from your hand into play tapped. I think that's a pretty good turn 1 play. I think puts you onto 2 land at the end of turn 1. I think that's pretty good. Again, only one of him is a little disappointing. So 2 Wirewood Channelers. So 4 mana for a 2/2. Tap add X mana of any one mana X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is the number of elves in play. So it does count your opponent's elves. So it can give you the extra mana there. Yeah, I mean that's pretty good, but bear in mind this was at a time when mana burn existed. So if you couldn't spend all that excess mana, you would lose life equal to the mana you hadn't spent. So if you had a bunch of elves out and used this ability, you could potentially end up with more mana than you could spend. I think there's a few mana sinks in the deck, but not too many. So I'm not saying it would have been like a crazy risk to take, because obviously, losing 1 or 2 life just to get a load of mana is usually worth it. Anyway, so then we have 2 Wirewood Elves. Just a normal kind of mana elf, 2 mana for a 1/2, taps to add green. Yep, fine. So this is where it starts getting interesting, in my opinion, like the actual cards that care more specifically about having elves. So we have 2 Everglove Couriers. So this is part of a cycle of couriers that are in the block. 3 mana for a 2/1. You can choose not to untap it during your untap step. 2 and a green tap. As long as it remains tapped, target elf has +2/+2 in trample. So it's kind of like a equipment creature in a way, like proto equipment. Yeah, but like +2/+2 in trample is a fairly decent buff to give, especially in this deck where the elves can potentially get quite large. So yeah, I think that's fine. It's a little average, honestly, I think, in terms of like cost. But I think it's a fine effect. It's okay. So we have a single heedless one. Really upset there's not actually more than one of these. So 4 mana for an XX trample. Parent tough is equal to the number of elves in play. As I say, counts your opponent's elves as well. It's an elf itself, so at the very least it's a 1/1. But it's not going to stay a 1/1. It's obviously going to get huge. Yeah, really good. I really liked these tribal avatar creatures. I really liked that cycle. Yeah, really enjoyed them. And yeah, this one I think is pretty good. Just having trample just makes it like a so much better. Just obviously can then you got all these elves that can just smash through. Yeah, can get really big. 2 Timberwatch Elf, 3 mana for a 1/2. Tap type creature gets +X/+X on turn, where X is the number of elves in play. So I mean that's pretty good. I mean the fact that the only cost is tapping it, it doesn't have a mana cost associated with it. Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, if this starts giving a buff more than like, I don't know, let's say like +3 or more, then like that's really good just to have kind of a giant growth on hand ready to go. Yeah, I think that's pretty good, and yeah, I think it's been reprinted a few times just because it's very, very good. Well-Wisher, sort of classic elf here. 2 mana for a 1/1. Tap, gain 1 life for every elf in play. Again, counts opponent's elves. Yeah, this used to be a terror back in the day when I played because we always think like, oh my god, it's so broken, gives you so much life, and like it does, especially if you pump out a load of elves, you get so much life off it. But you don't want to deal with it necessarily because it's just a 1/1. It's not doing any harm. It's just slowly gaining you tons and tons of life. Yeah, again, sort of disappointing there's only one of them, I think, but yeah, it's fine. I think it's fine to have like a big variance of elves here, so like if a new player picked up, they can be like, oh, I want more copies of this card, and so on. A few more elf cards here that care specifically about creature types. So Bloodline Shaman, 1 colourless and 1 green. Tap, choose a creature type, reveal the top card of your library. If that card is a creature card of the chosen type, put it in your hand, otherwise put it into your graveyard. So in this deck where you have just elves and land, pretty safe bet here just to keep saying elf and get basically a creature into oh, it's into hand. I thought it was into play for some reason, even though I just read it. It's okay. It's essentially a very kind of weird, janky card draw. It's okay, I think. Into play would be a lot more interesting, like if it was a Elvish Piper variant. But yeah, then obviously it'd be a completely different card. Elvish Pathcutter. Unfortunately, this isn't very good. 4 mana for a 1/2. 2 and 1 green, target elf gets Forest Walk until end of turn. So, I mean, like, land walk abilities are potentially very strong if you're up against, a deck that's playing those lands. But this is, I think, very expensive. Just him being a 4 mana, but only being a 1/2, and that ability is kind of expensive. This one's kind of weak. I think you could have quite comfortably cut Elvish Pathcutter. So one of the rares of the deck is Elvish Soul Tiller. So it's 5 mana for a 5/4, which is like quite a good size. So perfectly respectable beta. Just using it in that regard. But so when it dies, you choose a creature type, shuffle all creature cards of that type from your graveyard into your library. So obviously it dies, you choose elves, you can shuffle all your elves back into your library, kind of restock. Which is like you've got no other way of getting elves back from your graveyard, so like you might as well do this, I suppose. Yeah, I think it's alright. And I mean, like, just being a 5/4 for 5 is perfectly okay as well. And then 2 Wirewood Hive Master. So 2 mana for a 1/1. Whenever a non-token elf enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 green insect, which, I mean, that's pretty good. That you essentially double up the number of bodies you can have on the board. That's okay. I think that's alright. And then I guess we have like a few spell-like effects here, because this was a thing in Legions. Obviously, there weren't any instants or sorceries or enchantments, so I guess there was a design push to have more creatures that had like spell-like effects. That because if you put we'll look at it in the morph creatures, that's essentially going to act as your combat tricks, I suppose. But we have 2 Gem Palm Striders. So the Gem Palms are a cycle of creatures who you can cycle, and when you cycle them, they give their tribe an effect. I really like them. We'll look at some of them more later. I think there's a few more in the decks we're going to look at. So Gem Palm Strider is 2 mana for a 2/2, which is fine. It's a bear, but if you cycle it for 4, all elves get +2/+2 land turn. And honestly, you know, like paying 4 to give your whole, I mean, it is your whole board. You're playing elves. Your whole board +2/+2 and draw a card is like pretty good deal, I think. Honestly. So yeah, I quite like Gem Palm Strider. Basically serves in this deck as a as kind of like an overrun effect, really. 3 Patron from the Wild, 1 mana for a 1/1. You can morph it when it is turned face up. Does giant growth. So that's what I mean about like these morph creatures kind of acting as your combat tricks and spells and stuff. Obviously, a bit more expensive than just having a giant growth, but you know, it's fine, I guess. And then sort of going back to Gem Palm Strider, we have Tribal Force Mage, who is again another kind of like overrun effect. So 2 mana for a 1/1, but he has morph. You almost certainly want to pay him for morph because that's the whole point of him. You pay him face down, turn him face up, gives creatures the type of your choice +2/+2 and trample and turn to turn, which is again obviously going to be elves. So that's the other rare in the deck. I think it's okay. It's kind of disappointing that like there's, I mean, like you've basically got to pay him. You've got to use him for morph, the morph effect. You wouldn't just ever pay him just 2 mana for a 1/1. It's kind of like it's not. It's like a trap choice, isn't it? To play him normally. Like I'd rather he was just maybe like a bit more expensive, but had like flash and did his ability when he entered the battlefield, maybe. But then again, it's a whole different card then. And then a single Taunting Elf, 1 mana for a 0/1, has lure. Super good. Just means your opponent's stuff all has to block 1 elf while the rest of your elves sweep through and win. And then finally, we just have a bunch of other. I was going to say a bunch of other elves, but yeah, we'll get to that one card sticking out there. So 3 Defiant Elves is a 1 mana 1/1 for which has Trample, which I think probably got a few jokes at the time it was printed. But then again, you're in a deck where there's like so many buffs to power and toughness that like it having Trample baked in is actually pretty good. It means you don't have to worry about trying to find a way of giving it Trample if its power gets really high. So yeah, that's fine. 3 Stonewood Invokers, 2 mana for a 2/2, so it's a bear, which is perfectly fine. And this is, I guess, like your mana sink for Wywood Chandler. So you pay 8 mana, it gets +5/+5 to end of turn. Yeah, and these invokers, there's a whole cycle of them, and they all have this, the really expensive ability, which is, has a largish effect. So Stonewood gives himself a really high power toughness. The red one does damage and stuff like that. Elven Riders, 5 mana for a 3/3. 2 of those. They can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or walls. Fine, I guess. Having an evasion ability is important. A single Elvish Scrapper, 1 mana for a 1/1. Pay a green, tap, sacrifice it, destroy an artifact. Yep, fine. Fine little utility card to have. A single Elvish Warrior, 2 green for just a 2/3. Yep, I remember like really liking Elvish Warrior when it came out. I was just like, whoa, it's 2 green for a 2/3. That's really efficient. I mean, like, yeah, it is, which is like kind of adorable looking back on it. That this was kind of, I actually wish there'd been more. I wish there'd been like just a full playset of this in this deck, just because like it's such a to me it's like it feels like such an iconic card for a classic like elf tribal. And then weirdly, a single Snarling Undorak. I have no idea why it's in here. It's not an elf, has no synergy with elves. Yeah, just 4 mana for a 3/3 beast that only helps beasts, and it has morph. I have no idea why it's in here. This could have easily been another copy of Elvish Warrior. It's like it's enough to make me wonder if the deck list I found online was, for when I was putting the video together, was wrong. But everywhere I looked, all the deck lists just, oh yeah, it had a single Snarling Undorak. Like, why? It makes no sense. There's literally no reason. So I don't know why. I'm sure there's an interesting story behind it, like like a print error or something, maybe. I don't know. Or some sort of packaging error, or I don't know. But yeah, so weird to have a single Snarling Undorak. So what could have been? Well, honestly, it just needed spells. Like, I get the appeal here of just having like, oh, it's just creatures and land, but like, I find that so boring. Honestly, like, I think Magic's strength is having, you know, instants and sorceries and enchantments and stuff, like stuff other than creatures that can affect the board. And yeah, I'm not saying you can't go like really creature heavy, but having just creatures, I think, misses out like a lot of potential of making the deck kind of more interesting. I mean, I say that I have Wirewood Herald here as a creature, but yeah, this I don't know why this wasn't in here. I don't know why they had Snarling Undorak and not Wirewood Herald. 2 mana for 1/1. When it dies, you search your library for an elf, which is great. You know, that's what 100% what this deck wants. It wants to search out the elves that you know, can buff the others or, you know, produce more mana or whatever. This is a great way to search out your heedless one. Yeah, really surprised there wasn't a Wirewood Herald in here. Tribal Unity would have been pretty great. This is like a really good mana sink for like, you know, all your land and like mana you're producing off your mana ramp elves. Just give all your elves +X end of turn. Wirewood Pride again, like you could have made some space to put some Wirewood Prides in here. It's just a single green mana. Target creature gets +X turn to turn where X is the number of elves in play. Again, like really good pump spell. You know, if this is giving again like 3 or more, you know, that's good. And it's usually going to be giving 3 or more. And Wirewood Lodge, again, you could have made like space for this non-basic in here, which gives colorless and pays 1 green, tap and untap target elf. So much that goes well with in this deck, you know. So yeah, it's just really confusing why they went all creatures on it, honestly. So in summary, like yeah, it's a bunch of elves. Like if you wanted to do an elf tribal deck, like this is the way of doing it. But I feel like it's taking such a simplistic approach of doing it, of just like, we'll just throw a bunch of elf creatures in here, which is like fine. But I feel like it would have been fairly boring to play because like all you're really doing on your turn probably is going to be like land, elf, next turn land, elf, next turn land, elf. You know, like there doesn't feel like there'd be a lot of maybe interaction with an opponent, you know, in terms of like combat tricks or you know, instance, that kind of thing, which as I said, I feel is like Magic the Gathering strength. So yeah, like I don't know, the fact that it only has creatures like really bothers me, honestly. So but you know, the creatures that are here are pretty good. But yeah, apart from that one Snarling Undorak, which I don't understand at all. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's like a good idea with a flawed execution. Let's put it that way. But what do you think after seeing the deck list? Did you own this deck? Did you play it? Did you make changes to it? I'd really like to know. So stick a comment below. But I'll be back next time to look at another Legions theme deck. But until then, thank you for watching, listening, and have a great day.